Welcome to the Men After God podcast, where you will be challenged and encouraged as you pursue God, achieve success, and raise a thriving family. Join your host, Dustin, and his guests on a weekly journey to grow as husbands, fathers, and men after God. Here is your host, Dustin Alley.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Men After God podcast. I'm back with my buddy Luke, and we are talking about mentoring men in the church. Oh man, Luke, this is, I think, our bread and butter. This is why we exist in life. I believe you do too, just mentoring guys, helping them grow and develop into who God's made them. I mean, hey, we're a part of a men's ministry development organization. We literally want to help equip men to lead men that lead men, develop men who develop men, however you want to say it. We don't just want to do it. We want to help other guys do it. So if you're listening to the podcast today, you are going to get just our passion, our hearts, and I hope it's a blessing to you. Luke, when I think of mentoring, there's a few words that come to mind, and maybe we can define the differences between these. But you think, especially church context, discipleship, and then outside of church context, coaching. There's mentoring, and then some people I think get these confused as well. Counseling, and you got all these different terms that some will try to use synonymously when there are some differences. Talk a little bit about the differences between those of, discipleship, coaching, mentoring, counseling, and then let's talk differences. And then I know we can get to similarities, especially when it comes to discipleship.
I'm going to check my audio, make sure. I apologize. I want to make sure my audio good.
Yeah, you're great.
Okay, that's awesome. It switched mid podcast here, so
fun times.
Yeah, okay. And by switched, I pressed the wrong button, and then you pressed record, and I can't change it. So that's why. So anyway, I need some coaching and mentorship on technology
on how to run with this.
So I think I am, and I'll say this real confidently and put this out publicly. I'm currently writing a book on circles of impact of mentorship, inner circle, leadership advisory, accountability, your feedback loops. We have a lot of circles that overlap, even in ministry and outside of ministry, where I've got counselors and where I'm like in a multitude of counselors, there is safety. And by the way, counsel is counsel. But I want to clarify just the difference between a counsel and maybe a mentor. Counsel is where I go to multiple people and I give them the facts and the data and the reasoning and all the stuff, and they give me what could be godly counsel, could be good counsel, could be bad counsel, but I'm not going to take everyone's counsel. That's why the word in a multitude of counselors, they're not all going to give you the same feedback, but I can take a lot of good feedback, overlay what matters, and be able to make a good decision based on the insight of other people and their wisdom, their experience, their walk with God, stuff like that. So that's great. But that's counsel. Mentorship or coaching has a different goal. And mentorship and coaching, while it can be spiritual, you can have spiritual goals, spiritual growth, spiritual prayer plans, and different things where someone that can be a spiritual mentor can lead you along and help you grow in your faith. In life, mentorship and coaching are specifically, I am going somewhere and I'm going to go to someone who can help me get to the next level. But a lot of times as a mentor myself or as a coach myself, I want to do all the talking. And I want to really encourage you as you're developing. There's two things. We're talking to two different people here. One is the person who's saying, "Hey, I need mentorship. I need coaching. I want to develop in an area. I want to improve my finances. I want to improve in my family time. I have got goals and things I want to accomplish to be a better dad or to be a better coworker or to be a better leader. Right? These are ways that you can develop yourself. But then we're talking to the person who is the mentor or the coach. And I want to encourage the person who say, I do a lot of coaching. I do a lot of counseling or advisory type input. When you're coaching someone, you're not giving them the answer. I'm giving them the questions. I'm guiding their own resources. I'm encouraging them to look within and look within their own world and experience. Otherwise, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. You got to empower, not control, right? Because if you're controlling someone, you can look back in ministry over the last however many years you want to look and see there's a lot of people who want to control the outcome. Someone comes ask you advice about whether they should stay at your church or go to a different church or move. And the answer is like, you're not going to go anywhere. Like, God wants you to stay here. Well, sometimes God doesn't want you to stay there and you can have a bias there. So you want to take out the bias. I have a bias about everything and an opinion too.
Yeah.
But I want to
encourage
you And yeah, well, yeah, not according to my wife, but we're still praying for her. No,
Amen.
but in the aspect of this, just be aware your coaching and your mentoring. There might be time that you're using illustrations, or you're encouraging, or you're giving context to wisdom that you're laying out. But a lot of times, I'm asking questions. I'm using this to talk to allow the person that's receiving the mentoring or the coaching, for them to come to their own correct conclusions based on where are they supposed to go. How do we help them become the best version of them, not another version of you.
I think that last piece there is so important, of not having them become another version of you. I've had to work with people before who've come to me for coaching and stuff, and they've said like, yeah, but I'm not you. Like, I'm not trying to turn you into me. I can't. I don't want to. It sounds prideful. You won't be as good of me as I am of me. Right.
I'm not even a good version of me. Like, I promise you don't like.
Right. There you go. And I mean, that's not pride. That's just saying you're made different, and that's okay. We're the body of Christ, man. There's left hands, left feet, right feet, armpits. And I mean, they're all the same. They all have their own purposes. But I think that's a huge piece when it comes to coaching, is that we are not. Whereas mentoring is often finding someone that you do want to be like, finding someone that has traits, has a life path or something that is aligned with where you believe God is leading you. And you're going to them almost like, hey, I want you to be my Paul. I want you to be the one that I'm following, to follow Jesus closer. A coach isn't going to keep you away from Jesus, but they're not the ones you're going to, if you will, for that that type of guidance, right? So coaching, mentoring, different words, but I think they both play underneath the umbrella of discipleship. Yes. I'm afraid that because we've developed such great material and called it discipleship programs, we've relegated discipleship as a program, and that's it. Complete your 12 weeks, understand what we know and why we believe what we believe, and we're done. Discipleship's a lifelong journey that can start with a program, but that program should be, the intent of the program should be to create a connection between the discipler and the disciplee, if that's what you want to call it, so that when the program is done, they continue going through life together and discussing the things of life, following Jesus, how to have a marriage, and all these different things. And coaching comes into play there, of coming alongside, and as discipleship even, it's just a different style. All right, hey guys, we had a technical difficulty there that I couldn't find a great way to just cleanly edit out. And so you know what happened. We know what happened. We're back at it. Let's jump back into the conversation. We were talking about coaching.
We could use some mentorship in technology.
Yeah, for any of you that audio video professionals that would like to work for experience, please give us a call. We were talking about coaching, mentoring, counseling, discipleship, and then how when you could be in a coaching session, Luke, and there's times where it's like, all right, hang on, this guy's not getting it. Coach hat off. Mentor hat on. Okay, talk to me for just a minute. Let me show you this. Let me show that. Okay, all right. Now, let me ask you this question that's going to help you see where we're going now. And so, and oftentimes, and Luke, this is where you've said before, like, I do not need to be a counselor. And you're 100% right. I do not need to be a counselor. In coaching, Luke will coach you empathetically. I'm going to coach you directly. And so I'm going to ask hard questions that are going to make you look at yourself and go, oh, yeah, okay, well, yeah, I should be doing that. Luke's going to say it in such a way you feel good about hearing it. I'm going to say it in such a way that you're just going to hear it. And, that's a difference between him and I. But both are effective, just in different ways. And so know that a coach is there to help you. He's not there to tell you everything to do. He's there to help you work through the things you need to do in order to get where God wants you to go. And in ministry, I think we get so caught up on either discipleship being a program, or I need a mentor who's going to tell me exactly what the next steps I need to take, that we neglect the value of coaching. I saw a guy post on social media the other day inside of a comment thread, and he said something. It was tongue in cheek, I guess is the phrase, but he was saying something about, the question was about why men leave ministry or whatever. And it was like, oh, they probably didn't get enough coaching, and like, ha ha ha. And like, well, maybe, maybe, like, I know you're being sarcastic and you're kind of poking fun at the whole coach idea, but you might be right, because number one, maybe the guy needed to leave ministry, but he's leaving ministry poorly because no one was coaching him to help him see that he needs to leave ministry. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then secondly, Jesus asked questions. Jesus told stories. And even what he told the disciples, I can't remember the exact verse right now, but they asked him, like, why do you speak in parables? He wasn't giving it like exactly like, okay, here's the next step. Here's what you do, right? He was guiding, directing, and leading. And we've got to be willing to allow people into our lives that do that. Mentoring programs are great things to have. But when we say that, it's almost, I think, Luke, I hear like, okay, I've got to have the logistics, I got to have this and an email chain or all this, all these different pieces in place. Or when of our groups going to be like, honestly, like a mentor program could just be you saying, hey, I'm looking for some guys to have a Bible study with and talk to and mentor and things like that. And they're going to be at least one who's going to be up for that. I guarantee I'd be shocked if someone said, if everyone said, I don't want a mentor, right? That doesn't happen. And having a mentor program where you're coaching, mentoring, counseling, ultimately just discipling men, according to Barna, ministries that have things like this, they see a 40% increase in participant engagement and a 35% improvement in spiritual growth metrics. We don't need to be fancy with it. We just need to have something. And just do it.
Yeah, I would say you don't have to be fancy with it, but you got to be consistent with it. So consistency will pay. So I'm gonna talk to you because a moment ago we're talking about like the difference between mentorship, coaching, discipleship. Discipleship is educational. I'm trying to give you the facts so that you can speak clearly to the facts. You know what we believe, why we believe it, and can share it with others. Right. So part of discipleship would be sharing gospel, sharing your story, your testimony. That's part of it. Coaching a lot of times is more of the direct question of they're asking questions, you're getting the guidance, you're running the drills, you're doing the work, you're gonna increase your level as a player in the game. Mentorship a lot of times is teaching a man to fish, hence parables. I'm teaching a principle, not a specific do this, don't do this, or a set of rules, because again, rules are going to limit you to the rules and to the playing field, right? Because as you're developing this ministry of and call it whatever you want to specify what someone's getting out of it. In a mentorship relationship, somebody is pouring into somebody else, and there's two structures. One is I've got someone above me, ahead of me in life, that can speak to where I'm trying to grow. And you can get a mentor in any area, right? Spiritual growth. I want to walk with God deeply. Well, I want to go to someone who walks with God deeply to learn how to do that and have a goal there, right? And then there's another kind of a mentorship structure, which is more of a mentor, mentee, where I am a mentor because I am pouring my life and my experience into somebody next to me. They are also mentoring me. And Simon Sinek has a video talking about how he had a relationship with someone that was a mentor relationship, that he felt it was a mentor relationship that he was going to as a mentee to learn and develop. Turns out after years of going back and forth, they had developed a friendship. They were both pouring into each other. Now watch what happened. Dustin referenced this. When you are pouring into each other, what started out as discipleship had developed into maybe a coaching and then maybe into mentorship. It's all the same. It's really just relationship. It's just one person influencing another. But eventually that person that you're committed with, that you're learning with, you're growing with, we're always learning, sometimes those can become your middle of the night friends. And I will say this, in men's ministry and the men that we work with, a lot of time you talk to them, and I've done this. How many people do you have on your list that are your middle of the night friend? Like, I am the friend of 1,000, and I'm happy to be that. I don't mind it. I've got a lot of people who call me often, and I feel very loved that they would consider calling me to ask me anything or talk to me, right? I'm the friend of 1,000, but if you were to say, hey, who is my closest, something tragic happens in my life, who do I call? I have maybe two. I have maybe three. Most people have one, and some people have none. And so I would encourage you that as you're developing these relationships, this is an opportunity for you to create a deep connection, because you're being authentic, you're being vulnerable, you're being real, you're growing together. When you grow together, you develop a trust in which you develop a friendship of someone that is way more than a mentor. It's like they might start out as a mentor, a mentee, they might start out as a coach, but eventually they're just someone that you can trust, and there's someone that you can rely on. And that's so valuable in this relationship dynamic of, it's not just educational. I'm not just taking. I'm pouring into, because I'm committed to being vulnerable and being real, and that builds trust.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that friend of 1,000. I am definitely one of those guys. I think we've had this, we've talked
Yeah,
about this.
for
I
sure,
don't remember
for sure.
when. Was it a podcast or something? I don't remember. We had this, but I'm the friend of 1,000. And I love that. I love having a group of a large network of people that I can talk to and interact with and engage with and stuff. And I've got them from all different specialties, walks of life, and things of that nature. And
Yeah, yeah.
even when I went through my recent just emotional distress, if you will, in August, or late July, August timeframe. Nonetheless, I had a men's mental health expert I could call, and I called him up and was like, "Hey, man, I am going through it." And he was my accountability partner for a couple weeks and was talking to me about a number of things and was there for me. He connected me with another guy who'd been through a similar story, and we got to talk. And I talked to you, and I had a number of guys. And close by, I didn't have that many, like, in my own personal circle. I'm growing that. That was an area like, okay, I'm weak in this area. I need this. And so I did get to that point. And I'm thankful that that's continuing to grow as I'm developing those relationships now. And they didn't start off as mentor relationships. I have a mentor, a guy who was my coach for almost a year. And honestly, like it's not a guy that I call all the time. I'll just text him randomly, "Hey, praying for you, love you." I'll call him whenever something comes up, and and who he is, he doesn't actually, put it too swift. He doesn't need me in his life, right? But I'm thankful that he wants me as a part of his life in whatever capacity, because he's just a good guy, he's a good friend, and that is what comes from, you mentioned discipleship, the transfer of information earlier. 100% is, and part of that. And then we have to bring in the relational aspect to it. We've got to develop that, because if not, and it's just the transfer of information, once the transfer of information is over, and I've been guilty of this, I've done it. I've ran people through a discipleship program, and at the end of it, it's like, all right, cool, I've given you all the information, go forth and prosper, we've got to bring that relational aspect into it. Now, when you're developing some sort of mentorship program at your church, it doesn't have to be fancy. It needs to be consistent, and it can be different. It doesn't have to just be one-on-one. Maybe that is something that you can have the time for, but depending upon who you are in the ministry, the size of your ministry and things, you may be more effective at having a small group mentorship. So maybe 1-on-3, 1-on-5. I know we mentioned the Osterkamps in a podcast recently. Thomas Osterkamp does like a Man Up Monday type deal, and so does Anthony Stafford over in New York. Does Man Up Mondays, and they would get together and play basketball and talk Bible and things of that nature. Thomas Osterkamp takes his guys through a book, and they meet, I think, every other week on Monday nights, and he's talking to a group of 4 or 5 guys there in his church, just impacting them and growing them. And so the thing that I love that we believe in at Men After God is that we don't develop systems for you to put in place in your church. We want to come alongside you in your context and help you see what's best for your ministry, because what might work at your church or it won't work at another guy's. And then same thing, vice versa. We don't want to try to plug and play, because every ministry is different. We all love Chick-fil-A, but churches aren't Chick-fil-A for a number of reasons. Most people don't say "my pleasure," and so but also you can't just take a system and put it in somewhere else. And mentorship's the same. You can't mentor, you can't coach one person the same way you did another, because each person is individually unique, and some will respond better to a group setting, some will respond better to one-on-one. And then there's another type of mentorship that Luke kind of alluded to there. And so you can call it mentorship, you can call it friendship, accountability partners, whatever it might be. But this is peer mentorship. This is when you've got friends that you can lean on and grow with and stuff. And Luke is definitely, whether he knows it or not, he's that guy for me. He's someone I know I can go to that mentors me in areas that I am extremely weak in. And I love getting his insight and his feedback, because he's so good at delivering things in a way that I'm happy to hear it. And so, even though he insults me greatly all the time, we turn the camera off and he belittles
I am more
me.
direct with Dustin than almost anybody in my life, and he's like, "Oh, you make me feel so good about myself." I'm like, "I'm just speaking your language. That's all it is, man." So.
But that's exactly what the part of our relationship is, that for sure. Luke, when it comes to peer mentorship, let's talk about some positives and negatives there, because I know, we've experienced, I have positive and negative peer mentorship. Talk about that a little bit, and maybe how peer mentorships impacted your life.
Yeah, I'd say that the primary downside to peer mentorship is that a lot of times there's no established we are going somewhere, because if it's peer to peer, unless we have a target, a goal that we're working toward together, whether it be improving our leadership as a team, improving teamwork, or whatever it is, right? A lot of times we're just having a conversation, and it's more of just, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. It's almost like an advisory group. It's almost like just giving like a feedback loop, and that's fine. If that's what you need, then call it that. Like, hey, we're an accountability group. You're a feedback sounding board group, and we need those in our life. I think it's crucial we have those, but that's not mentorship. Mentorship is somebody taking somewhere they've already been, and so like a lot of times, surface transactional, like discipleship is more of a transaction. It's kind of one and done. Discipleship should be a lifetime journey. I believe that. Mentorship is different because it might be for a season. It might be very specific for 6 months, might be a year. But a lot of times it's an engagement of, hey, Dustin, you do business, you do coaching. I'm trying to improve on my coaching. Can you help me be a better coach? Can you mentor me to be a better coach? And you might say, okay, well, what's the goal? What do you mean by better coach? You might ask a lot of really good questions, and we define, like, here's the metrics that say that we're accomplishing the mission. And I'm not saying you have to pay for mentorship, but I have paid for mentorship, and it's worth every dollar that I've invested into mentorship and coaching, because every time I go and pay someone to teach me something, they actually do it, and I walk away with value that I've applied because they don't let me not apply it. Mm-hmm. But I'm having a conversation with somebody or a group saying, hey, here's where I'm growing, here's where I'm going, can we do it? Peer mentorship a lot of times is more of just, we're having a conversation, we're having a lot of deep conversation, I'm getting value, but not directional value. I'm not necessarily proving specifically in an area unless one of the people in that group has a specific mastery of something. So if they're a master communicator that might be teaching us communication, oh, that's great. That's like, can you help me be a better communicator? What's the homework? With mentorship comes a couple things. It comes the questions that are almost consistent. What did you learn? How did you apply it? What am I going to learn next? Right? Mm-hmm. Like, what did you learn? What did we learn last time? How did we apply it? Did we not apply it? What are we going to learn now? So that's more of a question, a loop of like, now the questions might change a little bit, but they lean into that direction of where are we going versus the peer-to-peer is, this is where I'm at. Can you help me where I'm at? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's that friend. It becomes that conversation, that venting, that, hey, like, okay, it was really good to get off my chest. And, and you're right, Luke, like there's a time and there's a place. Just know that's what you're doing. Because if you call it something else, then you're, I'm trying to think of an illustration right now, but if you call it something else, you're just going to stay there. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's healthy to stay there. I think it's healthy to process.
And you're not necessarily growing. And that's the thing is like, you're just communicating, and communication without growth is just communication.
Yeah. And time and place for it. Mm-hmm. But so I grew up in the South, and I go home to family and they just like to talk. And they're just talking about nothing.
Charlie Brown.
And to each other. And it's great for them. They love it. I'm sitting there like, why are we still, this is 3 hours and we went nowhere in the conversation. We're still talking about Betty from 25 years ago. Like, what's happening right now? And again, there's a time and place for that. I'm not telling you I don't just sit and randomly talk with people from time to time, but know what it is, right? And because Luke knows me, I'm very much purpose driven. Right. And if there's not a purpose, I'm very like uncomfortable almost. And maybe I need to spend some more time in that to enjoy my life and walk and smell the roses. And I'll get coached on that another time. But for today, we're talking about knowing what mentorship is. And to do that, you need to define your goals. Luke hit on that. What is the purpose of this mentor relationship? I mentioned in a podcast recently that I've contacted a guy and I said, hey, I want you to be my Paul. Now, I think you are a guy who he has a similar life story in how he grew up and developed and came into ministry and what's happened in his ministry life. And he's just thriving. He's following Jesus, loves Jesus, and is impacting people. And I'm like, I want to follow Jesus like you're following Jesus. And I've talked to other men. I've seen guys like that. And one of the things I will say when it comes to identifying a mentor for you is you want to find someone that you can relate to, someone that you can connect with. So because of my upbringing, and I didn't grow up in a ministry family, I grew up in like a Christian-esque home. Like we went to church on Sundays. Wednesday nights, maybe, right? And I didn't grow up in a pastor's home or anything of that nature. And I find a lot of guys in ministry nowadays grew up in some form of ministry type home, heavily involved in the ministry, or they were a pastor's kid or a missionary kid, and those are all great. I'm thank God for them. But we have such a different story. It's hard for me to connect on some things because just the way our lives panned out, there's just a lot there. And so to find someone that I can really connect with on a deep level, understands what it means to come from, a little bit of a trauma background and have Christ save you out of that and then put you into ministry. And then you're trying to figure that out. That really helped me to find that person. So when it comes to a mentor, find someone that you can connect with. And if you are the ministry leader, you do not want to connect mentors or mentees with mentors that they can't connect with. I had a gentleman get upset with me one time because I wasn't sending anyone to him to disciple. The problem was there was nobody coming into the ministry that he would have connected with. Yeah, sure, I could have put him in front of someone to transfer information, but there was no one coming in at the time that needed discipleship that he would have connected with. And, I get it. He felt, and I didn't communicate this to him. That was my fault, right? It was after the fact of him leaving that I found out this is what he's upset about. I wasn't proactive in that, my fault. But that is something that we have to take into consideration. And on that note, communicate it. Make sure you're telling people what to expect as the ministry leader when it comes to the relationship you're seeking to develop between two people or between yourself and another. And that goes back to setting the expectations for the relationship and setting the expectations for the outcome. Luke, whenever we talk to someone for coaching and stuff, you mentioned it. One of the first questions is like, well, what do you want to accomplish with this? What are you trying to do? Because oftentimes guys get into coaching conversations and calls, and we start the first words out of my mouth when I get on a call with the guys, like, okay, what do you want to do? Right? We're talking, we're connecting, and then they're getting there, and I don't want to say it derogatory, hemming and hawing, right? They're just talking, and that's what we want. We want to connect. Right. We want to hear more about your life and everything. But the coach's job is to say, okay, I've heard all that. Now, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? You gotta define that, and then stay connected, keep going and moving them towards that. But what do you do, Luke, when you have a relationship, you define where it's going, but it's not working out?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, it's happened multiple times for me, and I love it when people ask me to mentor them. I don't mean that from an egotistical. I love connecting with people, and I love trying to add value to people. And there's been several times, and I'll say this probably 3 times in the last year, and I work with a lot of people where someone has come to me because either I was recommended to them, and either within the company that I work with or outside of the company, and they're saying, hey, you can help me here. I'm like, okay, let's talk through this. And after we have a couple sessions, there's 2 things. Either they're not actually, they don't want to learn something. They just want to say that they have a mentor, and they don't want to do the work. And if you don't want to do the work, then don't talk to a mentor, because a mentor is a mentor that's worth their time is going to give you stuff to do outside of the hour or whatever your agreed upon time frame. So either they don't want to do the work, or they don't like it, right? Or it's not working because what I'm giving them is not actually what they want to learn. Like it's not the same direction. Like someone's like, well, I want to become a master communicator because I want to do a TED Talk. Well, I've never done a TED Talk, so I can teach them a lot about communication and speaking and resonating with people and connecting with people, but I can't teach someone how to do a TED Talk because I haven't learned that, right? And so when someone does it, you have to just be mindful. There may be a step back, say, hey, you know what? Let's are you learning what you want to learn? What is the metric in which I can see? They say, because if someone's growing, they know it, because it's difficult, it's painful, there's challenges. People know when they're growing, and a lot of times they love it and like, give me more. I need more challenges. Great. Or they're like, no, I don't want to grow there. That's not the direction, or this isn't my style. The step back is to start the questions of, hey, is this what you thought it would be? Well, no, I thought we were just going to have a great conversation every couple of weeks. Well, we can do that, but you don't have to. I don't have to be a mentor for that. I can just be a friend. Like I'm happy to connect, right? There's a step back, and there's 2 things we can give them. One is try to give them a new resource. So if I'm not the one, and I've not been the one a lot of times, because really, really direct people, unless they want to learn emotional intelligence, probably don't need to learn from me, because I don't beat them over the head enough, right? Now, if they want to learn how to connect with people and stuff, I can help them. But if they want to feel good about themselves, I'll do that. Just call me. I don't need to mentor you to feel good about yourself. We'll just,
And this is
in that
our
process.
friends, Luke.
Yes, right. But just be aware. I want to give another resource. So if I've got someone who's real direct and our style's not connecting, because I'm not being direct enough with them to tell them that they are being a doofus. A lot of times I'll say, you know what, I got a guy. This guy's name is Dustin.
I know a guy that will tell you you're an idiot with a smile on his face.
And by the way, several times I've reconnected these people with other mentors that they didn't know or didn't realize would be a good connection. And they are thriving and growing. And it's not because I failed them. It's because I helped them. Sometimes you're going to help people by disconnecting them or connecting them elsewhere. So just keep that in mind. Again, most of the reasons people stop mentorship is because they're not actually doing the work. The second reason is just because they realize that it's not the right connection, because we're not going in where they really want to go. And that's why clearly defining those agreements or those conversations at the beginning really helps people know, like, okay, in 3 or 4 weeks, I should start to sense challenges, pressure, growing pains in this area. And if I'm not, when I'm working with a mentor, then my mentor is probably not challenging me or not teaching me things that are going to be valuable.
Yeah. And that goes back to some, we talked about therapy at the beginning of the month and with our men's mental health episode, and how if you go to a therapist that doesn't work out, it doesn't mean therapy doesn't work. It means that therapist didn't work for you. The same is true with the mentor. Correct. If you go to a mentor and it doesn't work, it doesn't mean mentorship doesn't work. It's a biblical concept. Jesus, he taught those. And look, Jesus had 12, and one of them, it didn't work out with Jesus. So everyone's not going to work out with you, and that's okay. And being the men's ministry leader, being the one who's trying to get these programs up and running, number one, you need to understand something. You may not be the man to lead every man in your church. That's okay. But do you know the man who could lead the other man in your church, who could mentor them, who could connect with them and grow them, coach them and disciple them, whatever it may be? Because again, leadership is not about making yourself the smartest person in the room or making yourself the one who's lifted up. It's about elevating other people. And if the goal is the elevation of other people and you're not the one that can elevate them best, then you need to find someone else who can do it, swallow some pride and go, okay, gulp, that wasn't for me. That's this guy. And we lift them up. So you're lifting up the mentee, you're lifting up the mentor, and you're really doing what God has called you to do. And that is to help them become who God made them to be. And that is putting them in the right position based on their spiritual gifts and abilities. And if you have someone, now this is something that we've got to discuss, Luke. Have you ever been at church and someone tell you they love to teach, and then you hear them teach and you appreciate their love for it, but it appears as though it was not a gift that was given to them or a talent that has been developed in them?
Wah, 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 wah.
You got Charlie Brown's teacher up there who's like, I just love teaching the word and it's fantastic. And I'm going to ramble for 30 minutes and you're not going to get anything out of it. And then I'm going to complain about nobody paying attention, nobody being engaged, the class dropping in attendance by 30 people over the course of 2 weeks. And we're blaming the spiritual maturity of people when in reality, like, no, it's just that's not where you need to be. You need to go do an Excel sheet, right? Whatever it might be. But the same is true with mentors. You might have someone come, hey, I want to mentor someone. That's fantastic. Let's talk about that for a minute. You need to train them on how to mentor people. And you may find that they're not a fit to be a mentor. And it's not because they have bad character. It's not because they're dirty, rotten sinners. It's not because they don't love Jesus. It may just be not the time of life for them. It may not be like a gifting and something for them. And again, you want to make sure they're getting connected to the right people. As much as Luke was saying, he doesn't do well with having to mentor someone who appreciates things direct. If I'm mentoring someone who's extremely sensitive to things, I'm probably not going to be the best fit for them unless they just want that. They need to know what they're getting with me. Right, I had a young man who was in our youth ministry. And he had it was when our youth group was very small, and we were just starting out. And him and his sister would come over to our house, and we did made a prayer journal one time. We had just a dinner with them. It was a good time. Very connected, very close to the man to this day. And it was interesting. He would call my wife, or he would call me, and we started to pick up a trend. He called my wife when he needed someone to love on him and to be compassionate and caring. But when he called me, he knew what he was getting. It wasn't that. And we said, like, he calls Dustin whenever he needs to get a kick in the butt, and he calls her whenever he needs a hug. And that was really what it came down to. So that's make sure you know what you're getting there, and make sure the mentor knows who they're talking to and what they're doing with. Make sure you know who you're getting as a mentor to see if this is even their gifting and what they need to be doing. I believe discipleship's a responsibility of every person. We all need a Paul, we all need a Timothy.
Right.
However, the means by which that takes place, as the ministry leader, you've got to be someone who's discerning and watching over that. And then that's where you get a guy like Luke to come in and say, hey, Luke, I need to have a hard conversation with this guy who says he loves mentoring, but is absolutely terrible at it with this person, and I need to move him, right? And Luke comes in and does his thing, makes everyone feel happy, and their lives are completely different, and they don't know why they're happy about it. But Luke did a great job at it.
I do think it comes down to something I think you said a lot there that was just so good of understanding who and what, and there's a lot of understanding just how personalities work. And it doesn't mean that someone that's direct can't mentor someone who's not or whatever. A lot of times it's just as I understand who I'm mentoring. If I'm mentoring a direct person, I am more direct. I communicate in smaller sentences, not because they're not smart, but because they don't want the fluff. I don't need to be a politician with a direct individual. But with someone who is sensitive, I have to make it their idea. I have to let them come to their own conclusion. Otherwise, what I say is like, well, he doesn't understand who I am. So take that into account. One of the ways that you can best really start mentoring, so small church, 100 people, 200 people or less, where you're like, hey, I don't have a lot of people in my church who can mentor. And I know we need to have a mentoring type ministry, a discipleship ministry. It's going to start with equipping, and you're mentoring people, and you might do it multiple at a time. You might do a classroom session on, hey, this is how we do it. I'm going to teach them how to teach others also. But there's a way. John Maxwell has it this way. He says, hey, if I'm going to equip somebody, he has a 4-step process. First of all, I'm going to do it, and they're going to watch me. Second of all, they're going to do it, and I'm going to be with them. Third of all, when it comes down to it, they're going to do it, right? And then I'm going to watch them do it, right? I'm going to be with them. So it's just more of a like, first of all, I do it, then I do it, you watch me, then you do it, I watch you, and then you do it, and somebody else watches you. So when it comes down to it, no matter what we're doing in mentorship and spiritual discipleship, the goal is that I'm giving something to someone that they then can give to somebody else. That's how you're going to equip it. So you say, well, how do I do that? Well, if you're mentoring someone, bring on your Timothy, just like Paul with Timothy. Here's somebody like, hey, you're my son in the faith. Mm-hmm. Follow me. You're going to be with me during these 4 or 5 mentorship sessions or discipleship, whatever you want to call it, right? And then I'm going to be with them while they do it. Now, that is difficult. It is very difficult to watch somebody that you're teaching do it. It's like watching your kid try to use a broom in a dustpan after you've just showed them how to do it. They're not going to do it real well the first time, or it might take them 10 times. But if you keep on doing it and jumping in and taking over and grabbing the microphone, you're going to limit your growth, their growth, and what God can do through the ministry of mentoring and modeling how it's done.
Oh man, that is so good. And see how that plays out at home, right? My kids have chores that they have to do, and one of them is washing the dishes. Well, my wife is very particular about how the dishwasher is loaded and to ensure that the dishes are cleaned every single time. And I'll catch her doing dishes. I'm looking, I'm like, hey, that's this kid's responsibility. But God, I just want it done. Like, stop it. You are, get away from the dishes.
Right.
They will take care of it. And if they don't, you bring them back and you show them, and they do it, and they do it, and they do it until they get it right and do it right the first time. The same is true with a mentor mentee. Looking at scripture, 2 Timothy 2:2 says, and the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others. I'm afraid when we read that verse and we hear that, like, okay, I've got to find people that are already qualified to do this. Listen, I wish every person that got saved immediately would get up from their seat, or get up from the altar, or put their hand down, and then there is just this like sign that pops up on their head of like, hey, this is what I'm qualified for, this is what I should do, and I will be great at this. That's not how that works. Chances are you're going to have to develop the men into qualified people. And now, if they're unqualified for some biblical reasons, that's another conversation. But if they're just growing in their faith, you're going to have to develop them into the qualified person. And while Men After God can come alongside you in your ministry and help out in a number of ways, ultimately, we push back to the local church because we develop the content that we have for the development of the men's ministry and the development of the men in the church to develop men who develop men. So you've got to develop the men into who they're going to be. Maxwell, again, will teach, and we're going to quote Maxwell a lot, guys. Just get over it. if you can find someone who can do it 80% as good as you can, let them do it.
Yeah.
80% is not failure. right? I was talking to a business owner the other day in coaching, and she was just talking about passing stuff off and things. And was afraid that, they wouldn't do it as well as she could. I said, I guarantee they're not going to. I said, however, is the way that they're going to do it going to destroy the business, ruin the brand, and completely? No. Mm-hmm. Is it going to get accomplished what you want to accomplish? Yes. Why are we holding on to it? Delegate it out, let it roll, and allow it to happen while you go do something else. So the same is true when it comes to developing these men. We've got to be able to let them mentor and let them fail. Now, I know we're dealing with people's lives. That's very serious. You obviously don't want a guy out there who's given terrible advice and mentoring towards sin and things of that nature. Those are things that nip in the butt. However, most of the time, it's not going to be that bad. It's going to be something small. It'll be, hey, you told him to wear a black suit when he should have wore a blue suit. I mean, and granted, if you're telling people what color suits they should wear, we should really talk about what mentoring is anyway. But 90s, yeah, right. And so, that's a whole other deal. What I want y'all to take away from this episode is that mentorship, discipleship, coaching, counseling, whatever you want to call it needs to be happening in your ministry with a goal, with a purpose. I think that's why we get so many of the Saturday morning breakfasts as men's ministry. We get together, we have a great time, it's wonderful, the food's good, and we're appreciative of it, but the men aren't going anywhere. The relationships aren't even being developed. It's because we've not set purpose behind it. So what is the purpose? And then I like to find models of ministry and implement them and then adjust them to our context. Some people like to develop their own. It doesn't matter which one you do. What matters is that you have something going and then adjust as you go. This is another way to find out if someone's good at mentoring or coaching or anything, is to let them do it. It's the same way we find out what we're gifted at in ministry. Do you know how I know I'm not good with elementary students? I tried teaching elementary students. No. Okay. I can't, but I would have thought like, I could do that, because most elementary people I see like teaching, especially youth or kids ministry, they're hyped up. They're excited, like things that I can do. And I'm like, yeah, okay, this is great. I can do this. Oh no. That's not my gifting.
Yeah. Dustin is gifted in urgency, which means he's not gifted in patience, and kids need patience. So
that's it. And a funny story about a girl getting hit in the face with a dodgeball that I'll tell you another time. But, I know that because I tried it and I did not do well and I was not fulfilled from it. I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm done. I'm out. And so the same's true for you as a men's ministry leader. The same's true for the people that you're working with. Let them try. Let them fail. Luke, prepare your final thoughts on mentoring and ministry and guys doing that. But let me talk to y'all for just a minute. Men After God has developed a nonprofit, the Men After God Network. We have a social media group where guys can get connected from all across the globe. And we are praying towards impacting at least 10 church planners and missionaries within our first year. The nonprofit's already been created. We're working towards the 501c3 designation. And in 2025, we would love to impact 10 church planners and missionaries across the globe. We want to do that by investing at least $10,000 into each one of them and their men's ministry. It'd start with a $2,500 donation directly towards their church plant or missions, and them on the mission field and their ministry there to go towards men's ministry. $1,500 would go directly towards the family. And the only stipulation to the family is this: you cannot use it for ministry. Too many church planners and missionaries will receive gifts and donations and kind gestures and things, and they'll end up using it on ministry. They'll take another family to dinner. They'll do something. They'll put money into the ministry to make something happen. And I can appreciate that. However, we want to help take care of that church planner and missionary. And then the rest of the funds are going to be paid for travel expenses, for on-site visits with our coaches, materials, coaching resources, and things of that nature, so that we can bless them in a big way to help impact the men in their context, because the lack of men in ministry and being developed for Christ is not just something that's taking place in America. It is happening around the globe, and we are seeing a need that we want to come alongside them and meet. And you can reach out to our Director of Nonprofit Operations, Adrian Ferrari, at adrian@menaftergod.net. If you've got any questions about that, how you could give and donate and be a part of us investing into men's ministry at the ground level with church planners planters. So they start the church plant with that, and into missions organizations. As of the time this podcast has come out, we will have already been talking with someone to translate our stuff into Spanish. The next language we're going after is Portuguese, so we can get into Brazil, and then we'll be getting it into the others, Chinese, French, German, and things of that nature. But we wanted to hit those two populations first. Luke, final comments on mentoring and ministry.
I think one of the things that we miss in the process of mentoring is that a lot of times we look at the work of mentoring. So specifically from a mentor perspective, like I am trying to develop people who can develop people. And we look at it from how much work and the pain of, how much patience it takes, and watching people fail and keeping them going when they feel like they failed, all this stuff. And I really want to highlight the fact that it is worth it to invest and empower other people, and so that they can learn and develop to empower other people. And in a leadership perspective, while we talked about the 80%, like they're going to do it about 80% effective. Hopefully you get 80%. If you get there, that's great.
Yeah.
But what I have found over and over and over again in the mentorship of direct management, people that work and report to me, or people that have come to me from the outside, is that as they've been given, or as they've given away empowerment and given away control, and they've watched that 80% be 70 and maybe take a dip, what has happened over time is that the people that they've mentored are better people than them in that specific area. And so what happens is, while there's always that little bit of a dip because of tribal knowledge and communication and just the understanding or passion and stuff, is that eventually that person is more qualified and doing a better job than the original person was. And that is the reward, is that if we're doing what God has called us to do, to teach others also, that's a directive. That's an opportunity. Congratulations. You're doing what God's called you to do. There's a reward in it. And the reward of it is way more of the, wow, look what God is doing in the lives of these other people. And they're doing it better than I could. I can give all the credit and glory to God, because I can't take any, because it's certainly not me. And that's where there's a lot of joy in the development of people. So yeah, there's that, oh man, this is painful to watch. Like, I don't want to listen to this. These poor people. Hey, that's part of the development process. Give it time, give it patience, give it your all, because in the end, you'll be able to do more through more, because a lot of significance states that one is too small of a number to achieve greatness anyway, to achieve anything great. So you got to invest in other people.
Absolutely. I love that. Proverbs 27:17 says, iron sharpens iron and one man sharpens another. This highlights the need for men sharpening one another and holding people accountable. And that's what mentoring does. It creates a space where men can share their struggles, grow in their faith, and develop leadership skills under the guidance of more experienced believers. And it's a wonderful program, or just relationship, and to have in your ministry. And so it's my prayer that you will develop some sort of mentoring relationships between you and the people in your ministry. Or if you're the men's ministry leader and you're developing mentors, develop a relationship with them. Remember, you do not have to be the one mentoring everyone. If you're the one mentoring everyone, then you might be starting out, which is perfectly fine. However, if you're doing that for 5 years, there's a step of growth that needs to take place where you step back and allow them to go mentor others, right? And so, in fact, I want to highlight this story real quick, and then we'll close out. I had a conversation with a pastor in the last month or two who was talking to me about his men's ministry and how guys were kind of leaving that. And my question to him was, when they get to a certain point, like, how are you helping them step into a leadership role? How are you letting them take the next step, do the next thing? Or do they just kind of like what is it? They hit their lid, John Maxwell, right? Got to hit the lid.
Yeah.
Do they hit their lid and you're not doing anything to remove that? So they're going and finding something somewhere else. And that's true, especially for driven, ambitious men. I'm one of them. Like, if I get to a point where you're not letting me do anymore, I can't grow and develop, I'm very much like, well, this has been fun. It's time for something else. Now, I'm 36, 37 as the time of this podcast goes out. And so that's something to be said. There are men that are 20, 30 years my senior that don't have that same mentality and things. And that's life stage and things like that. But there are young men coming up, 18, 30 years old, that we need to be invested in and allow some room to run. And yes, they're gonna hit the clothesline. You're gonna give them an inch, they'll take a mile, and there's gonna be things you're going to have to work through. But what Luke said about the benefits, I mean, there's a man that I know right now, and I call him a man. He's a kid. He's in his mid-20s, married with a kid now, that I got to develop as a youth and just see grow and mentor. And man, nothing has, I've got my own children, and I know the day that they grow to that stage, that'll be a different thing. But as far as ministry is concerned, to see these young men that God allowed me to be a part of their lives and who they have become, knowing that it wasn't me, it's what God did, but he let me be a part of that journey. It's phenomenal. And it truly just brings such joy and fulfillment. So guys, develop a mentoring program of some sorts, whatever it looks best in your context, in your ministry. If you have questions about how to do that, email us, support@menaftergod.net, or connect with us at facebook.com/groups/menaftergod. We'd love to talk to you about it more. Guys, I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Men After God podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes, and keep up with the show by following us at facebook.com/menaftergod. You can also reach out to Dustin personally at dustin@seekconsulting.us with any questions or for coaching on being a man after God. Until next time.